the first thing is very essential to understand and follow the special policy and consider that the launch right now, as well as the employer might need to comply with the employment law.
44,000 people who, as of 1st of October, thanks to decision by the Thai government, now have the right to apply for a work permit. Hi everyone, this is Alexandra Lasota in the next episode of the Sustainability Brief. Today we are talking with Khun Mic about the situation of refugees in Thailand who have been allowed to work for the first time in over 40 years. Khun Mic, I am reading your bio, and it's really impressive. So you are now acting as a regional manager at the International Detention Coalition. You have been a co-founder of the Coalition for the Rights of Refugees and Stateless Persons and the Thailand Migration Reform Consortium. And before that, you also served at 2 Parliamentary House Sub-Committees focused on refugees and irregular migration, where, of course, you have been looking at the Thailand migration governments. You seem like someone who have really contributed to how migration is managed in Thailand. But tell us, how did you get to do what you're doing? Where did it start?
When I was still a student, the education on human rights or humanitarian issue in Thailand is very, very limited. So I didn't know what is the word refugee even, but perhaps it's maybe a destiny or the fate that, about 20 years ago, I first job to working with refugees in the camp in Thailand. That was 20 years ago. So by that time, I don't really understand who is refugee, where they are, and everything. They took me to the bus and then they sent me to the camp. And then because I can speak English, and that's probably very difficult to find someone who can speak English in Thailand by that time. So I was there and then I was confused. What is this world? So it's like I opened my world. I wonder why they need to be in the camp, why they be confined in the camp, because I feel like they're just like us. They're just like people who seeking for safety, seeking for a better life. So this is something I was curious by that time. And then with the opportunities and experience that I've been working in the refugee and migration issue for long time, I starting to building my own approach to to create change in terms of policy, in terms of implementation, to protect migrants and refugees in the country.
To go back for a second to what you said about refugee camps, I imagine that you are talking about the 9 refugee camps located at the border between Thailand and Myanmar that have been established there in 1984. Lots of our listeners have never been to a camp like that. So could you just describe how does it look like?
It is in the border towns, but really in the remote areas. Some camp might be close to the town that could take like 1 or 1.5 hours to get there. Some camp are located in a very remote distance, even in the jungle. That might take 3 to 6 hours to get there and to get out as well. The road is very difficult to get in. And people inside are refugee from Myanmar that they fled to Thailand, like you said. So it's about 40 something years that they need to stay in that camp. And then they rely on humanitarian assistance only. They cannot work or even their work. The camp is in the control area by the Thai government, so they cannot like legally leave camp without permission, and then they can't go anywhere. They can't work. They can't have self-agency. So we have seen the high rate of suicide inside the camp as well. And I think what is important to imagine about how long it have been, 41 years at least, that they stay there. So this past two or three generations that they need to stay here. So if you can imagine that uh, when you get inside Myanmar, and then by that time you were 10 years old, and then now you are 53, and then you know you just have a chance to go out from the camp to go to work.
Wow, it's a lifetime, isn't it? 41 years. And how big is the population living in those camps?
Uh, let's say that there are two groups. One is registered people who like live in the camp for a very long time, and then there are some newcomer because it's in the border area, and then we have no fence and anything, so people can get in and get out, and the conflict in Myanmar still exist. So there are some newcomer have came into the camp as well, but uh, the number of registered refugee in the camp we call uh, 70,000 people. But we also have the number of unregistered in the camp, which is around 30,000. So approximately the overall is 100,000 people that living there now. And then 42,000 of them are working age, so 18 until 60 years old. And this group are eligible to apply for the work right. That is the new policy in Thailand.
And so this is what we are actually here to discuss. So 44,000 people who, as of 1st of October, thanks to decision by the Thai government, now have the right to apply for a work permit, which essentially means they are going to become an active part of the labor market in Thailand. Khun Mic, can you tell us a bit more on what does it mean for businesses in Thailand who are going to be acting as potential employers? And what does it mean for companies in whose supply chains those refugees are going to be working?
So there are a lot of things that we need to be aware of. The first thing is very essential to understand and follow the special policy and procedure that the launch right now, as well as the employer might need to comply with the employment law to ensure that every refugee they are hired has the document and legal permit to leave the camp and to work outside the camp. This is something that it would protect both business and also worker from the exploitation.
Just so I can come in there, because we know that for migrant workers, these are the one-stop shop centers where they can go and obtain required documentation. For the refugee population, where do they go? How do they go through that process to obtain a work permit?
Right now, the policy just launched for less for a week, so there's still a different practice in different camp because different camp have different contexts and distant and access. But what I understand is that first, the visitor themselves who want to go to work outside the camp need to go to ask the Ministry of Interior, the district, to leave the camp for 50 days to go to do the health check. So the health check for 7 disease that is preventing in Thailand, and then go to buy the health insurance, and then to issue the work permit. And once they're able to issue the work permit, they need to come back to the camp, and then can the work permit to the authority, so the authority can issue the permission to leave the camp for 1 year to work outside the camp.
So when they approach those different institutions, do they already need to have an employer identified?
Because of the remote area that they stay, it is very difficult for employer and employee to make. Some cases, the employer can go inside the camp with, the authority, and they choose the resident who willing to work with them. Or sometimes the employer need to go to Ministry of Labor to ask for them to get into the camp. Then the Ministry of Labor will submit the names of the employer to the Ministry of Interior. Ministry of Interior then will give the permission for the employer to get into the camp, and then to go to select the refugee workers. Once they are free up, or then the process start for refugee worker to go out of the camp to do other documents and process, like health check, buy insurance, and then issue the work permit.
In which sectors do we expect these workers to be looking for work?
Basically, we have some consultation with the local business leader in Tak province, which is this Tak province have 3 refugee camps in the province, and one of the camp is the biggest camps. The most likely a job opportunity for them would be the garment and textile manufacturing, ceramic and electronic component, domestic workers, or skilled craft. And geographically, most of the immediate opportunity would come in the towns that very close to the camp. For example, Mae Sot Tak, Mae Hong Son province, Kanchanaburi, Ratchaburi, where there are some refugee population and the demand from the local factories and employer. Furthermore, there is the sugarcane federation in Sa Kaeo province, which is in the eastern region of Thailand, so it's very far away. But they has been asking for thousands of refugees for cutting the sugar canes in the season and thing. But they are supporting in terms of the travel documenting period thing. So this is something that came up. I also consult with the job matching company in the Bangkok that typically, there are needs of thousands of Myanmar workers who can speak English to meet the demand of the tourism and healthcare industry, which is unable to find Thai worker who can speak English or as the language requirement for their business. So this is something that actually align with the camp education program, because within the camp, refugee students learn English as a second language.
So essentially, we are looking at the refugee population entering the garment, the textile, the ceramics industry. I imagine also special economic zone, because there is a big special economic zone in Mae Sot. Then you also mentioned sugarcane in Sakeo, so closer to the Cambodian border, and then potentially Bangkok, the hospitality industry. I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a Thai employer or international company who essentially is looking at the human rights in their supply chain. And so what really jumps at me first is that essentially we are dealing with quite of a vulnerable population who is entering the workforce. First of all, they are going to be facing a lot of challenges in terms of accessing those work permits, because from what you described, it is quite complicated. There are going to be entering industries where I think in a number of cases, they are going to be paid a piece rate. They are going to be paid essentially for what they, in the sugarcane industry, what they harvest. In the textile industry, what they produce. It does seem to me like this is a population where employers should be paying more attention and should be providing more support, simply because that initial safety net that other workers may have may not exist. And specifically because we are looking at some lower paid industries. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, first of all, these refugees stay in camp for long time, and therefore, fully camp is like they need to adapt a lot of things in their life. So giving them some of the vocational training or support when they go to work with you is very, very important. But to be honest, they are living in Thailand for a long time, even though they live in the camp, but they are rooting in Thailand. But I think there are some key areas that we should be aware. For example, the employer need to understand and be able to follow a special policy and procedure, as well as comply with the employment law. So this is some of the requirement that needed in the beginning to ensure that every refugee they are hiring has the document and legal permission to leave the camp and to work. But this is something that it can protect to both business and to worker as well. The second thing, because Thailand has made a focus on the promoting responsibility on the business through National Action Plan on the Business and Human Rights Phase 2, 2023 to 2027. So this is a plan that it has a clear goal and indication for the protection of migrant workers as well. And therefore, the government, the agency, and the business shall be followed up this. The third one is human right to the jets. The government is now drafting the law that will require especially large companies to check and manage human rights risks to their operation and supply chain. So for companies that hiring diversity, this means that being alert to the risks such as discrimination, unfair payment, or the unsafe working conditions.
Do we already know what is an estimate cost of obtaining the work permit, purchasing the insurance, and fulfilling all of the procedures that are required to essentially for the refugees to work?
We need to understand that these refugees never been working officially or legally before, so they don't have money, and therefore, to starting with, I think the good support, the first support for hiring this refugee is to support all this processing, and that is something that we civil society try to negotiate with the Sugarcane Federation, and they're happy to cover all these costs, which is something that we and the refugee leaders who join our trip to see the workplace very happy with. At the same time, they support the transportation as well as guarantee what you call the salary for
The human salary.
exactly. So the federation is managing this with their member. So this is something that we see as a good model. As I said, that there are still different practice along nine camps. So what we are trying to do now is trying to identify some good examples that we can build as the good model that can be standardized in all nine camps later on.
I imagine that with job market opening for refugees, what also we will have to be watching out for is the middlemen that, always in these situations where there are administrative procedures that are quite complex, we see that there are individuals who are willing to jump in between the employee and employer, taking a small cut from the employee, in exchange of helping them go through the administrative hoops, and this often adds a lot of cost onto those administrative costs. So I imagine that this is something to look out for if you are an employer that wants to be transparent and that doesn't want your workforce to be paying exorbitant amounts of money.
Yeah, and I think what can some initiative that the employer also can ask the government when you asking for the government to arrange a refugee worker for you is something like can you have like a online job matching or job market that you can look to the profile of the refugee workers, and the refugee worker also see the profile of the employer, and they're trying to see how they match to each other, or even the one-stop service. Better that you can go one time and then you can get through all of the process together. So this is something that can help build the transparency within the system that I see in the future. Well, basically, if you are able to hiring refugee workers from this night camp, I think this is a great opportunity that will strengthening your business and contribute to the society at the same time.
It is definitely, and especially as Thailand is facing labor shortages. So I do think that it's everyone that can gain from hiring this population. Thank you so much, Khun Mic, for joining us. It has been a pleasure to have you on the podcast. And that's it. See you next time.